What you're about to see is a 100% non-corporatized independent activist news that you won't get on corporate mainstream media. So to help us keep acting out, become a patron at patreon.com/actout. This week on Act Out, from the streets of DC to the front lines of disaster capitalism relief, we're sharing and highlighting the power and inspiration of people coming together, working together, and getting it done. The March for Black Women and the March for Racial Justice spread joy, power, and fight through the streets of DC this past weekend, and we'll give you a little glimpse of the action. Next up, Bobby Rodrigo shows how we do better in the aftermath of disasters via mutual aid and community-organized relief efforts. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out.
Rockets! Blockade! Bulldozers swarm outside the checkpoint gate. A noise flash broke the hush and blew me into the street. I awoke next to the body of my baby. No!
Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. This past weekend in D.C., the March for Black Women and the March for Racial Justice took to the streets to spread awareness, power, and indeed joy. And while the fight for racial justice and the commemoration of murdered Black men and women are indeed somber topics, there was so much dance, music, laughter, and spirit in the streets this Saturday that it was far from just a requiem march. It was a celebration of life, of fight. And as we spilled through the streets in this epicenter of the empire, I considered something. Because I often feel jaded, and I've mentioned it to you on the show before, about big marches and permanent events, parades, as I like to call them, because the question in my mind is always, well, how is this tactic useful? And oftentimes I feel it's not. Like, what changed? Who changed? Why bother? So I go home feeling a bit deflated, edit a few pictures, and allow this thin layer of cynicism to coat my consideration of the event. Well, not so this time. And I know exactly why. First off, this march was not organized by a lofty NGO without any connection to communities or people. This march was specifically organized by the people and the communities that it was about. No faceless, soulless, multi-million-dollar organization. People. And therefore, secondly, the energy, the spirit, and again, the joy and power of this march highlighted that the point isn't always to saddle a march with the weight of changing the world, but instead with changing minds, changing hearts. As hippy-dippy as it may sound, if you were there, you know. You could not possibly have left without feeling uplifted, inspired, and engaged. People had their eyes open and they saw Black women marching next to Indigenous women, connecting struggles and also joy, connecting music and dance. People saw the power and resolve of Black women outside the Department of Justice, calling this system out for its racism, its patriarchy, its murders, and promising to never back down. People saw women lifting up women. They saw white folks showing up. They saw connections being made, networks being strengthened. They heard drummers and saw dancers. They felt something. And that something is the stuff that changes hearts and minds. That something is the shit that manufactures dissent, that brings people into the fight and keeps those in the fight going. I've been doing this for a long time, and Saturday made me happy. It made me feel hopeful, uplifted. And I considered that while direct actions like blocking a pipeline, building a community garden, delivering supplies, while those actions cause immediate and powerful change, marches can be, and in this case, this march was, the emotional inspiration that fuels those direct actions and organizing. And you could call it spiritual, magical, or whatever you want, but it is nothing to be cynical about. So to those of you who have often felt, as I have, that marches don't do shit, I hear you. But you never know when that march you felt meh about actually inspired someone to give a shit, inspired them to join the fight. And in that case, who am I? Who is anyone to say that that march didn't do a damn thing? But secondly, and again, more importantly, when marches are organized quite literally of, for, and by the people, and they recognize intersectionality of movements, issues, and indeed emotions, marches can do a lot. And I know I can't translate it all via video and pictures, but I did my best to try. From the streets of DC, the March for Black Women and the March for Racial Justice. Take a look.
We must fight for freedom!
We must fight for freedom!
We must fight for justice!
Okay? So here we go. Put your hands together. We must fight for freedom. We must fight for freedom. We must fight for justice. We must fight for justice. It will take all of us. It will take all of us to get to the other side. To get to the other One more time, y'all. We must fight for freedom. We must fight for freedom. Hey, we must fight for justice. We must fight for justice. Hey. We hold the Department of Justice to account across this nation. That's why we're here. Amen. We hold racist policies, racist policing, surveillance in our communities to account. That's why we're here. That's why we're stopping. We want everybody to know where this building is, because this is where your complaints need to go. This is where your letters need to go. This is where your action needs to go. And that's what we'll be doing when we march for black women, when we march for racial justice. That's what this is about. What's coming?
Oh, yes. That's all right, baby. It's all right. Sing, sing.
But they wind up not in me.
Does that make it all the way around? Thank you. Carry on.
Now, shifting from the emotional fuel behind direct action to some of the most intense direct action out there, let's take a look at the relief efforts happening around the U.S., not by the government, but by the people. Longtime community organizer Bobby Rodrigo has been on the ground in both Texas and Florida. He joins us to talk about the work being done, the situation on the ground, and what we need to and can do to help. Take a look. So first of all, before we get to what's currently going on with you, let's first talk about Florida and Texas, because I know you were both places. Talk about what you did and what you saw in terms of government versus community organizing and outreach.
Well, as far as the disasters started, I started with pretty much the second day of Harvey. I loaded up a number of equipment, a lot of equipment, and a lot of personnel, and I drove out to Houston. And while I was driving out there and getting set up out there, I was working medical rescue, both with the Cajun Navy and with other organizations. And myself, I'm a very experienced disaster relief person in different aspects. So we went out there to help as much as possible. And from the standpoint of the difference between government and community, it was they got in our way most of the time, or they didn't help us most of the time. For example, I'll give you a good example. When we were in Port Arthur, and when I say we, I mean a number of organizations, not like something I'm running. We're working all together. FEMA chased us out of the area, told us we couldn't do any more rescues, for example. And then 3 days later, the Coast Guard did a massive call to activists requesting that they respond to waterborne recovery. Now, for those who don't know what that means that we're pulling dead bodies out of the water in hazmat suits, etc. So, you can't speculate in these things. This is a very hard process because disasters, you kind of have to let the storms tell you what you're going to be able to do, and you have to respond appropriately. So we can sit around and speculate as to how many lives we would have been able to save. If they weren't pushed out of the way, who knows? But the fact remains is that they were in the way. And then Maria happened. I'm half Puerto Rican, which is only relevant because it means more to me than normal from a personal level, but it's a human thing. Everything's a human thing. That's why we're out there doing this. So, that essentially means I've been out, I don't even know anymore, 4 or 5 weeks or whatever. And we spent the day yesterday talking to Governor Scott in Florida in order to pave the way for us to be able to allow to get in there. And I got reports today that are just beyond bad as far as what's going on. We sent a team yesterday, and they are in Aguadilla, which is in the northwest part of the island, and they have gone and talked to the community, the mayor there, and they were brought into an area that we've actually now been able to use as a command center. We're going to start. We have another team that arrived there today. We're taking it over to baseball stadium, and there's thousands of people there, and there's like 4 bags of rice, and that's it for them to eat. So now we're focusing our efforts. The media is just as bad at this as anybody else, and the media and the government, essentially, their approach has been everything about San Juan, both the politics, the arguments, what's going on. It's like the only thing that's in Puerto Rico is San Juan, which is absurd. The majority of the whole island is damaged. There's no power anywhere in the island except in the little dribs and drabs. It's going to take the impact is horrible. But to get to what you're saying, FEMA has been confiscating stuff. It also has been putting a bureaucratic net that, and this is, I know I shared with you the email from that FEMA sent Senator Nelson. We were in community. We're talking to everybody. And so FEMA sent this email to Senator Nelson, which they forwarded to us because we were talking about the hindrances. So in the email, it says, these are the steps that you have to do in order to get humanitarian aid to another place in the United States of America. We have to remember, this is the United States of America. So there shouldn't be any hindrances. Like, just because there's an ocean instead of a highway, we still should be able to go there and do everybody. So anyway, the very first thing that they say that we must provide to them when we send aid over there in a manifest is the purpose of the aid. Now, I don't know. I don't know what to say to that other than what the fuck? I mean, let's be real here. The purpose of the aid. Another part of this has been, I think it was the fifth one, that in order to get the aid in there, you must have permission and a contact with a local municipality in order to get the aid. Now, not just everybody needs to kind of take that in context. I'm Puerto Rican. There's millions of Puerto Ricans in the country. And so if we show up in Puerto Rico with aid for our mother or our cousin or our friends or just anybody, we can't do it unless we have access to the local government, who can't communicate, by the way. The thing about us in the NGO world and the volunteer world is, we're not even trying to bash government, though we're going to highlight the problems. We'll work with you. We'll work around you. We'll help you. Whatever. Just let us reach the community. If you just look at it if you stay away from the corrupt angle or the absurd angle, just the bureaucracy that they've got in place makes no sense at all. I mean, just because we can't drive like I did to Texas, we ran into a checkpoint in Florida. When Florida first happened, they wouldn't let us down US 1. So we went to the side of the road and put the boats in the water and went around it. Now, if you think about the absurdity of what they're saying, why aren't the people who at the checkpoints down there doing the rescue stuff that we're trying to go do instead of sitting there? It's the same thing with FEMA in Puerto Rico. Why are you doing all of these things instead of going out there and helping the people? Here's a story for you that just happened to us. So last night, as we're getting a team ready to go that left this morning from Opa-locka Airport, we find out that there is a child in distress, a 10-year-old child who is in distress and has some equipment that can't be used that is life-sustaining because they ran out of gas. So one of the gentlemen in the Third Wave Volunteers team that works under Dr. Allison Thompson gets a hold of the Coast Guard and arranges for them to do a drop. Coast Guard was very cooperative. No issues there, and like I said, I could care less. So we get the Coast Guard they couldn't get to him, so they get the Coast Guard to do a fuel drop, and the fuel drop was done, and they were able to get the generator working in order to keep this young man alive. And then today, on our flight, not the government's flight, on our flight that was paid for by nonprofits because we had to pay for this one, it was $18,800 for us to fly 8 people and about $600 worth, 600 pounds worth of supplies. Left this morning at about 9:30. It's on my Facebook wall and all that other stuff, all this stuff. And we brought, right now in the air is this child and the child's mother coming back to Miami with one of us as being an on-flight nurse, making sure that if they have to do a tracheotomy on this child, that there's somebody there that can do it. So now we've lost the person out of the 8-man team to go into the city, for example. But irregardless, and I'll get a report when we get down there. And through the night, this gentleman Ari on the team was talking to the doctors at Miami Hospital in order to arrange a place for the child to go when they get down here so they can pick it up. This is the kind of stuff we're doing, and yet there's all these hindrances or bureaucracies in way, whether it's for politics, whether it's in official government, And I'll say one last thing about the absurdity of what's going on in Puerto Rico. For example, they're talking about no trucks being able to move and no cranes to get all the containers off at the port. Well, I'm sorry, there is a whole branch of the United States Navy called the Seabees. All they do is construction. That's what they are. It's called the Construction Battalion of the United States Navy. We got bases that are Diego Garcia and in New Orleans. We have bases that's all there's on there. They could send in a group of Seabees into this port and they could do whatever they wanted. They could operate anything that they want and they would be able to preserve life. And they could figure out the logistics of it later or who's going to pay for it later or whatever. It's just crazy what we're trying to deal with just to preserve life. And Puerto Rico's done. It's going to take 8 months easy for them to get power in that, because the Westinghouse turbine, which is one of the two largest power plants on the island, is absolutely wiped out. The water's inside of it. And anybody who knows engineering knows it takes 4 months just to take it apart. So where are they getting the power from? And then the Teledyne, and we're not talking power lines 9. We're talking about the power plants being completely destroyed. That means that we have an island of our own citizens that are out of power. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the island relies on only fossil fuels to power itself. It has no solar grid, which we're trying now to introduce there.
How much are you doing, like, where you're just like, you know what, fuck the government, I'm doing this regardless, I don't even care if it's
Oh,
illegal?
we're
like...
cowboy. We are totally cowboy. We are totally cowboy. We are there. We like, even though we've had this discussions, I was actually told by government people, I don't know, I guess it's called off the record. They just said go cowboy, and when they run into you, they're just going to leave you alone. Well, we'll see, whatever. But the people from the Humanitarian Aid and Rescue Project, HARP. That's basically a marine division. You know, they go in first, just like any Marines do. They're just a nonprofit full of Marines. And they are there on the ground. I've had 5, 6 sit reps with them today. Sit reps are situation reports for those who don't know. They're on their sat phone. When they got there, they rented a car. They showed their 501c3 status, so they got a full tank of gas right there at the airport. It cost them $60 a day to rent a car. They drove from San Juan to Aguadilla, which is across the top of the island. The roads were clear, thankfully. Then they went to Aguala, which is south of Aguadilla. We had a rallying house. We have a house there. The entire town is destroyed, completely wiped out. Luckily, the house that we have is on stilts and concrete and built correctly. So that's where we're rallying. We have 12 people there so far. Then this morning, because I got there yesterday, getting ready for our next crew today, they went up to Aguadilla. They went right to the officials in the airport. There's a DEA is there, the ATF is there, the DHS is there. You know, we have alphabet soup going on, and that's fine. I don't care. It's whatever. It's an airport. I mean, I get it. I don't expect the government to say, okay, here you can have the airport. So then they went up to the mayor in the city just north of Aguadilla and talked to the mayor in Aguadilla, and now we essentially have taken over a baseball stadium as a command center, and we are cowboying the hell out of it. We are sending people from all over the place. We have supplies running. There's a gazillionaire, we'll call him a gazillionaire, who has offered to ship anything that I can have shipped to Puerto Rico from anywhere in this country. He'll drop a container and have it brought down to Port of Everglades and send it to San Juan. Problem is that shipping is backed up because guess what? They can't get the stuff off the ships. So we've got a parking lot in San Juan. So that's out. So now we just got to ask for planes and raise money for planes. You know, we have a 747 that's going out there. We're strategizing on what airport we're going to use. But I'm done waiting. It's 14 days. We should have been in there with no issues, with no confiscations day one.
Yeah,
we were driving to Texas.
We can go into Afghanistan in 2 days and get shit taken care of.
Hey, baby, that's what I'm talking about. Let's go to war and we're rocking and rolling, right? Hey, and get money. You know, and we all know how we feel about our wonderful, just like you know, I am all about peace. And we love to spend money on war, and we don't like to preserve life because we damn sure destroy plenty of it. It just blows my mind that this is our country. Everything that we do is 100% to the effort. Nobody takes anything. There's no overhead cost. You know, don't get me started about the Red Cross. You know, got to be diplomatic. You know, right? Okay. And we don't have the. You know, I'll put it this way: if I was a CEO of a nonprofit, I am a COO of a nonprofit. But if I was a CEO of a nonprofit and I was earning over $1 million and there was a crisis, everybody be eating fat. I'll tell you that right now. There's no way that you can make that kind of money and serve people crap like they do and like they have. When I was in Houston, we were working with the Cajun Navy and doing all the dispatch. Before I got on the ground, we were getting some of the reasons why doctors were coming to us that were trying to volunteer. Doctors are great in these crises. They're fantastic. Nurses, first responders, they know the deal. They know it. And since they can come and do their service and their expertise. And they all come out there. And doctors and nurses and EMTs were being turned away by Red Cross at the George Brown Convention Center in Houston. And if you want to know why, you're going to have to ask them that question.
Finally, I'm going to let you go, but I just want to know where you're headed to now and what the next few days look like for you.
Well, I'm on my way back to our warehouse that I've been so wonderfully put in charge of. So I have so much less to do, right? Actually, everybody's forcing me with having assistants because they know I'm not an octopus. It's kind of interesting. But when we found out all these distressful things today, we've set up our cowboy mode, I guess. even more. And again, we don't have a problem talking to the government, help. And when I say cowboy, we're not doing anything illegal, because I don't consider anything that FEMA tells me legal when they're saying, why do I want to have, what is the purpose of my humanitarian aid? I'm sorry, guys. Let's arrest me. Let's go to court. So, but so the next couple of days, it looks like if everything goes well, I'll probably be in Puerto Rico in Aguadilla by the weekend, it looks like, because I don't want any of the rescue teams or any of the security teams to be bogged down doing logistics when I can go in there and do that for them and let them go out into the field. We basically have a grid search approach, a high rescue interaction grid approach for the entire northwest of the island, from north of Ponce all the way to the ocean, and then east all the way to Aguadilla, and then back down to Moco, which anybody, of course, can look this stuff up. It's all right there. And you can even look at the FEMA's out there photographing all day. You look at their website and you can check out everything that they're looking at. You don't see anybody down there doing anything, but they got some great pictures.
To help the relief effort from wherever you are, please take a look at the sites listed at the end of the show, also linked in the description on YouTube and Occupy.com. As Bobby notes in his reports, we do better. And that will do it for this week's Dose of Dissent. Thank you so much for watching. Please spread and share this with all of your friends, foes, and people you don't know. Check out the last slide again and the description to see the sites mentioned in this week's show. And for continuous updates throughout the week, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Heads up to anyone in the Bay Area, I will be doing a book event and spoken word performance at Adobe Books in San Francisco this weekend. For more information on that, check out artkillingapathy.com/performance. From the Devil's Den, good night and act out. And real quick, to keep independent, non-corporatized media like this show going, donate at Occupy.com/donate. If you'd like to donate directly to Act Out, visit patreon.com/actout.
I can hear the boots are stomping. Come on, boys, let's get some rocks to throw. I can't stand to hear my father cry anymore. Time we left one of you motherfuckers dead in the road. We've been backing up inch by inch, we got nowhere else to go. It's been too many years since you pushed and said my shove. I'm not a